What up, everybody? It's Frank Mula back at it again with another video today. You're watching Level Up, Double Down, where we don't play around unless it's video games. Now, as a reminder, we're currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and with that being said, this endeavor requires your utmost support. So if you like the type of content I make and you want to see more, like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask, and I hope I can earn your support today. And if you're already subscribed, then I want to express my deepest appreciation for your gesture. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, which has been my overwhelming absence when it comes to creating content and producing more videos on a consistent basis. I'm going to be straight up honest with you guys. I've had a lot going on in my personal life behind the scenes, and a lot of it has to do with slaying dragons and trying to put out fires, which have been more or less a distraction, which has taken away my focus from my overall goal of this channel. So with that being said, I'm only human, and I owe it to you guys who've been diehard supporters, who've been following along with me on my journey, and I appreciate that. In life, when there's obstacles, you either have two choices, fight or flight. Well, you know me, I'm always gonna choose to fight. So with that out the way, let's go ahead and get things started. So on today's episode, this is going to be the ultimate shootout to determine which one of these Wavebird wireless controller adapters will be the last man standing, meaning which one of these adapters offer enough features to make them worth your while providing a meaningful uplift to your gameplay sessions if you currently own a GameCube console, and if you're currently in the market to buy a Wavebird wireless controller secondhand. A lot of these Wavebird controllers are being sold without being bundled with the matching adapter, forcing prospective buyers to resort to forking over exorbitant amounts of money just to buy the adapter alone, which I consider highway robbery. Now, while scouring Facebook Marketplace, I recently came across a seller who was offering a Wavebird controller bundled with a matching adapter, which tends to be far and few between, and a lot of the times, sellers are asking for egregious amounts of money just to buy it. Well, I was fortunate enough to have a seller who was somewhat reasonable when it came to the price we agreed upon. I came out spending $55 in total for the Wavebird controller I purchased, which was bundled with the matching adapter. So shout out to Rachel, you the real one. And also, shout out to Gabe_4444 for helping to make this possible. Now, the only drawback from the sale was the controller was missing the battery cover, so I had to scour eBay to obtain one. But the problem I ran into was the least expensive option I found available was $20. This included both the base price and the shipping, so I wasn't trying to spend that much money, especially for a back cover, which I consider to be reprehensible. So I actually went with another option, which was to purchase an off-brand version of the battery cover from a seller on eBay, which cost me around $8. A couple of months ago, I had purchased a different GameCube controller, but unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize it had some discoloration based on the pictures, which was probably due to the previous owner leaving it in sunlight, and the ABS plastic that Nintendo would use to manufacture these controllers didn't age well since they were susceptible to discoloration when left in sunlight. So I decided to take the back cover off of that controller and use it on the Wavebird controller I recently purchased that came bundled with the adapter in order for that to be a complete set. Now, for those of you who've seen my original video where I reviewed the WavePhoenix adapter will notice that I was using a different color GameCube controller, which was silver. Unfortunately, that controller was on its last leg, as in it just didn't want to power itself on. When I did my original review video, I almost didn't follow through with it. Reason why was because the battery terminals were corroded and it was hard to make a conductive connection. Prior to that video, I had to use a soldering iron and a soldering wick to remove the terminals from the PCB of the Wavebird controller, and then I had to put the terminals in a cup full of baking soda and pour distilled vinegar over it in order to cause a chemical reaction to help remove the corrosion. But the inherent issue was that over time, the terminals had become so dull, it just couldn't make a conductive connection. So rather than trying to beat a dead horse, it was just better off for me to buy a replacement Wavebird controller instead. It took me a hell of a journey to get to this point. So with that being said, it's story time. Now, are any of you guys familiar with the YouTube channel called Retro Rick? Well, That guy actually resides near my hometown, and before dabbling into YouTube myself, I actually met him once in person. This was exactly 2 years ago. He actually owns a local game store, and when I visited, we struck up a conversation. He's a very nice, personable, and humble gentleman, so I have nothing but respect for the guy. However, he is a businessman, and one of the things he inquired about me was if I was interested in any of the items that he had on offer in his store. From what I can recall, I did mention to him that I'm primarily interested in collecting video game hardware, not necessarily the games, because I prefer to mod game consoles in order to play ROMs on them via flash storage. Most of these games that are 30 years plus will eventually turn into glorified paperweights over time. If any of you guys know or ever heard of Disk Ride, then you'll understand what I'm referring to, but I digress. I did mention to him that there's a couple of items on my bucket list that I've been seeking out, which were the SNES and the Wavebird wireless adapter. And when he gave me his asking price for both items, yeah, at that moment, I knew it was way too rich for my own blood, so I had to pass on it. However, it was no hard feelings, just one of those situations where the price was more than what I was willing to bear. Now, at the right price, I'm more than willing to buy. It just has to be a fair deal without me holding the bag. But if Retro Rick is watching this video, just remember, I'm that guy you met 2 years ago who gave you his business card that looked like money. And I told you to keep it safe and put it in a picture frame, because it's gonna make you a lot of money someday. So shout out to Retro Rick, story time over. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with the proceedings this evening. Just to recap what I had mentioned earlier, we're going to be running through a litany of tests to determine which one of these Wavebird adapters is suitable enough for our use case while offering enough quality of life features in a future-proof scenario. In the end, will the WavePhoenix turn out to be the comparable replacement for the original Nintendo OEM Wavebird adapter? Next time on Dragon Ball Z. Nah, I'm just kidding. So with that being said, let the games begin. Starting off with the first category, we'll be discussing pairing. So, how seamless is the process to sync a Wavebird controller respective to each adapter? So, both controller adapters have their own process that must be initiated when pairing them with the controller that's intended to be used. For instance, when it comes to the Wavebird adapter, the main thing that is critical is matching the same channel selected on the controller so that it corresponds with the same channel that's selected on the adapter. And as a result, the Wavebird adapter will instantly detect the controller and pair up with it. Now, I must say, for the Wavebird controller to pair up automatically with the matching adapter and as quickly as it does explains why so many people prior to me owning one have revered the Wavebird controller historically as one of the best wireless controllers by far, hands down. Now, on the other hand, the process for pairing the WavePhoenix adapter is quite different, being that it includes a pair button on the front of the adapter, which has to be tapped first while the adapter is connected to the GameCube console, followed by putting in the following button combination, which requires you to hold down both X and Y buttons simultaneously, which will eventually cause the WavePhoenix adapter to flash green, and as a result, the controller will get detected and pair up with the adapter. However, one of the main benefits you get from pairing a controller to the WavePhoenix adapter is the controller will automatically pair up with the adapter the next time you decide to use it, since the initial pairing you did earlier will cause a WavePhoenix adapter to remember that same controller you paired last. The convenience factor you get here shouldn't go unnoticed and is a testament to the engineering that went into the WavePhoenix design by the original developer, Luke J. So if you haven't seen my original video where I reviewed the WavePhoenix itself and I went into detail about the origin story, you can check it out right at the top. Now there's a minor misconception that I want to address, which is that if you order a WavePhoenix adapter from AliExpress or if you order one from a manufacturer in America, they both operate in the same vein, since the source code that they're based on is identically the same, since it's an open source project and all the files are publicly available for anyone to see in order to manufacture their own. So, There's no intrinsic difference between the two. I even purchased one from AliExpress, and if you notice on screen, I'm using it right now, and it operates identically to the one that I bought, which was manufactured in America, so hopefully that squares things. Category number 2, ease of use. Does this adapter work as intended, and are there any caveats when compared to the other adapter? Okay, so one drawback that the Wavebird adapter has is that when it's being used in conjunction with the WavePhoenix adapter, the Wavebird adapter has to be positioned in the first player slot. Otherwise, if it's in another slot other than the first player slot, while the WavePhoenix adapter is in use, the Wavebird adapter will fail to power itself on, and therefore, your controller will be unable to detect it. Although both adapters work just as intended, and they function just alike when they're paired with its intended controller, the WavePhoenix, however, is way more versatile when being used alongside a real genuine Nintendo OEM Wavebird adapter, which is a takeaway I want to stress from this test. Category number 3, input lag and latency. Is there any noticeable delay after making a button press? I ran into quite a few problems while attempting to carry out this section of the video. Let me explain. My initial goal was to test the difference in input lag and latency between the WavePhoenix and Wavebird adapters by using a homebrew emulator called SNES 9X running on a modded GameCube through the firmware called Swiss. The game I selected was Super Mario All-Stars, since one of the sub-entries in the game contains a remastered version of Super Mario Bros. 3, which includes a battle mode where both players can compete against one another at the same time in order for me to test this out. First off, I'm using a retro-bit HDMI adapter to display an RGB image on the monitor I'm using. However, due to the nature of the GameCube console, some games have a tendency to switch from a multitude of different resolutions and aspect ratios while in the process of loading screens, and unfortunately, the portable AOC branded monitor I was using initially could not load the resolution that it had switched to when attempting to run SNES games from the homebrew application, the SNES 9X emulator. Fortunately for me, I have a different portable monitor that I was able to use moving forward during this process, which is an Acer branded 15-inch portable monitor as well. So, note to self, not all portable monitors are created equal. Now, although the Acer portable monitor was able to run the game without issue, the other snag I ran into when running the SNES 9X emulator was it would designate the button controls for player number 2 on the same controller as player number 1. So if there's another wireless adapter connected in the player 2 slot, it would bypass whatever controller that's connected. So essentially, player 2 will be assigned to player 1's wireless controller. Now, if I connect a wired GameCube controller into the player 2 slot while player 1's controller is connected wirelessly by either a WavePhoenix or Wavebird adapter, I still get the same exact result. Player 2's controller cannot function independently on its own without being tethered to player 1's wireless controller, and vice versa. I'm not entirely sure what this quirk is about regarding this emulator, but it's quite an unfortunate side effect if you expect to use either a WavePhoenix adapter in conjunction with a Wavebird adapter, or even two WavePhoenix adapters simultaneously while assigned to both player number 1 and player 2, if your intention is to use homebrew applications to run games by the way of emulation. Mind you, this doesn't affect GameCube gameplay performance. However, my observations are strictly limited to the use of SNES 9X running on the GameCube by way of Swiss, but your experience may be considerably different depending on your use of a different emulator other than SNES 9X. But all hope was not lost, because earlier I had tested out the compatibility when using the WavePhoenix adapter simultaneously alongside the Wavebird adapter when playing GameCube games, and it dawned on me that Nintendo actually released a version of Super Mario All-Stars specifically for the Nintendo Wii. So I decided, since the GameCube controller is actually compatible with the Nintendo Wii, let me whip out my soft-modded Nintendo Wii that I own and go ahead and carry out the test using that instead, in order to avoid those previous hurdles I had mentioned earlier. And look at that. The WavePhoenix controller adapter is essentially a functional equivalent, being that it operates identically to the Wavebird adapter, and there is no noticeable difference between the two. Now, if you've never soft-modded a Nintendo Wii before, then you don't know what you're missing out on. So let me go through some of the menu items and showcase for you how everything is set up. What you're currently looking at is an app called WeFlow, which is part of the Homebrew channel. So if you want to take a stab at setting your Wii up just like mine, then you'll need to make sure that you have the Homebrew channel installed first before you can even do any of that. And when it comes to soft modding the Wii, that's a long story within itself, and there are plenty of guides out there online that'll get you started. However, what I can do is point you to a relevant guide I use to help me set up WeFlow, and I posted a link to it in the video description below. So if you're looking for a cheap gaming option that provides you with a ton of replay value, then I would highly implore that you look into finding a used Nintendo Wii console on a secondhand market, because not only is this particular console backwards compatible with the GameCube, but that in itself gets you access to a vast gaming library from one of the most underrated catalogs that Nintendo has to offer today. Bottom line, the Nintendo Wii is a fully faceted gaming console, and did I not mention already that they can be had for dirt cheap? Category number 4, long distance connectivity. How far away can a Wavebird controller technically still be in use and continue to stay operable while connected wirelessly in respect to the adapter that it's paired to? What I'm actually doing right now is a very simple and academic test, which requires that I start up a game with each individual controller connected wirelessly to a Wavebird adapter and a WavePhoenix adapter to see how far I can go before either controller becomes inoperable due to a lack of signal strength, and during a total of 4 phases where I'll be measuring the distance as I go. I figure a good game to use as a litmus test would be a fighting game, and what I'll be doing is changing the time limit to be infinite, so that way I won't have to worry about going back and forth after a round ends. Using a Bosch Blaze laser distance measure, I was able to determine that it's approximately 6 feet and 1 inch from my GameCube to a nearby window in my house that leads outside, and from that same window to the area in which I was standing outside to test, I was able to determine that it was approximately 19 feet and 8 inches. So, if you do the math, that adds up to 35 feet and 9 inches in total, and based on the recorded footage, that was the range in which the Wavebird was still able to function while still being operable, compared to the WavePhoenix, which would stop working right at the entrance to my doorway, which was approximately 19 feet and 1 inch from the GameCube. So, last but not least, the final category, the Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island wireless controller detection test. Now, if any of you guys recall, in my last video where I reviewed the WavePhoenix adapter, one of the games I had showcased while using a WavePhoenix adapter was a Super Nintendo game, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. If you don't already know by now, that was one of my favorite games I played on a Super Nintendo during my childhood. Now, for anyone who isn't familiar with what transpired during my session when attempting to play that game, you would have noticed that the game itself detected an incompatible controller was connected, and thus the game refused to allow me to proceed because of that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, as a metric to determine the versatility of each of these adapters, one way to validate their competency is by testing them out using a specific game in question. Since we got the WavePhoenix adapter out the way, let's test the Wavebird adapter to see whether or not it produces the same result, and spoiler alert, it's the same situation, unfortunately. So, for kicks and giggles, I decided to try this out on the Wii as well, and lo and behold, it actually works just fine without issue using both adapters. So, for whatever reason, there's an issue with the SNES 9X emulator for the GameCube. So for anyone watching, if you could reach out to the developer of that emulator for me and let them know of this discrepancy that's affecting controllers connected wirelessly to the GameCube, that would be greatly appreciated. More than likely, the best controller for the GameCube is the one that you already own. Case in point, if you don't already own a Wavebird controller, the BlueRetro adapter can fill that void by offering an alternative option for playing your games wirelessly on your GameCube. The BlueRetro is a project that is courtesy of Jock Gagnon, who goes by the name of DarthCloud64 on X.com, which he started back in 2018 as a way to repurpose his modern-day Bluetooth controllers so they can be used on retro console hardware. Rather than scouring the second-hand market in order to obtain those controllers specific to the retro console being used, which can become quite expensive due to the nature of the current retro collector scene, he decided to create a universal Bluetooth adapter that would take advantage of the current HID devices. He has since added support for the Wii, PS3, PS4, Xbox One S, and Switch Bluetooth controllers. Being that this project is open source, you have the option of building your own wireless receiver, or you can purchase one from a number of manufacturers, LazyBear being one of them who I purchased my WavePhoenix adapter from. However, I actually purchased my BlueRetro adapter from a seller on AliExpress back in January earlier this year for $15.40, and I'll be posting a link to their storefront in the video description below. So shout out to BlueRetro, because not only do I own the iteration of their adapter for the GameCube, which allows you to pair a multitude of current generation controllers to be played on the GameCube, but they also offer a variety of adapters for a number of older generation game consoles as well. One of them being the N64, which I also own the BlueRetro adapter for, and I've showcased it on this channel on a few occasions in the past. So, my key takeaways and closing thoughts. Based on each test I performed, if I was forced to choose a definitive winner in this contest, then I would have to go with the Wavebird adapter, which shouldn't be a surprise to any of you guys who've been watching this video up to this point. Overall, it's a very sound product since it has good long range, pause, and connectivity is seamless when you pair it up with the Wavebird controller. It's no surprise that these wireless adapters are still being sought after to this day, especially since they were produced in small quantities, since the GameCube console was considered a flop when you compare it to the sales of the Nintendo Switch and even the Nintendo Wii. Matter of fact, I just heard recently that the Switch 2's console sales are currently sitting at 23.68 million today, which actually surpasses the Nintendo GameCube's lifetime sales. So let that sink in after just a year on store shelves. However, I don't want to just outright dismiss the WavePhoenix adapter for what it has to offer, since it is a decent and viable alternative option if you currently own a Wavebird controller, but either you've misplaced the adapter or you received a Wavebird controller secondhand which didn't come included with one. Just because a Wavebird adapter is apparently the superior of the two doesn't negate the viability of the WavePhoenix nor diminishes its value either way. I had mentioned in a previous video, you can purchase the WavePhoenix adapter from LazyBear, which is a domestic manufacturer located in the US, in the amount of $25, or you can purchase one from AliExpress for as little as $17, which is what I did as well. So one final note, I recently purchased myself a used GameCube secondhand from a seller on Facebook Marketplace for around $60, which I plan to do a number of mods on. So if you want to see how things play out, stay tuned to the channel so you can stay up to date by either subscribing or even making a comment, since I reply to each and every single one of them that I see. So, as I wrap up this video, feel free to let me know in the comments, what were your thoughts about the presentation I gave? If you're interested in this type of content where we discuss new modern day hardware for retro gaming consoles, hit the subscribe button down below and click the bell icon to turn on all your notifications so you don't miss a thing. And also, if you made it this far into the video, I want to sincerely thank you for watching. So until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Again, this is Frank Moolah signing out. Holla at me. Yeah, it's Moolah. One time. Holla at me. You watch Level Up, Double Down, where we don't play around, unless it's video games. Watch Level Up, Double Down, where we don't play around, unless it's video games. Watch Level Up, Double Down, where we don't play around, unless it's video games. Watch Level Up, Double Down. You're watching Level Up, Double Down. Welcome to my palace. Treat the world just like a tab of stylus. They try to do it, but they never seem to match my prowess. They talk on the block, word of mouth, I sight to see. Go back a decade, tell me who the fuck is nicest me. Righteously, I can be more than what you have in store. So much better than your credit score. Wait on hands when I rock the P. I had a secret calling. It don't matter what people thinking. It don't matter what people talking. I'ma still put my all in. Ballin'! Word of Jim Jones, I still gotta keep it solid. When I murder this song, I keep coming with hits, never running out. Bitch, try to fuck around on some dumb shit, then find out what's the consequence. Y'all stay on the fence, I stay on the move. Expect the world to stop for you, no I pity the fool. My A-team stay ready, yo team stay pity. New king on the scene, my headpiece stay heavy.